Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Tonight we're going to talk about safety in our schools. Once upon a time that meant worrying about asbestos in the buildings. And then we worried about clean water in the drinking fountains and then clean air through the buildings. And now the latest safety concern, overdose and death from drugs like fentanyl. That is the new safety concern in schools. And so a lot of them are getting Narcan. And that is our big story tonight. Narcan is a wonder drug, a nasal spray that can bring someone who's overdosed back to life in seconds. The state of Oregon will send it out to hundreds of middle schools, high schools, and colleges across Oregon for free. The list includes both private and public, and it's something that's already being done in the state of Washington. But when it comes to Oregon's plan, there's a gap that could affect transparency if a school needs to use Narcan. Evan Watson explains.
The Oregon Health Authority will send free opioid overdose reversal kits to schools and colleges across the state. Naloxone, often bought under the brand name Narcan, is an easy-to-use nasal spray that can reverse an overdose. It's championed as one of the essential tools to fight back against the escalating fentanyl crisis.
Prevention is the most important thing here, preventing the overdose, making sure that people in schools have access in case a student does overdose on school property.
Tom Jean's a deputy state health officer. He says more than 500 schools, from charter and private schools to public schools, community colleges, and universities, signed up for the free doses within a week, showing high demand.
You know, it's been in the news, everybody's aware of it. So even if a school or school district has not actually had any opioid overdoses on in their schools yet, I think most of them are recognizing the need to be prepared.
OHA will give each school up to 3 kits. Each kit has 8 doses. Health officials recommend putting naloxone near bathrooms, AEDs and first aid equipment, and on buses. Schools will decide where they put it. But there's a key element that's missing. We asked, how will the state know which schools are using naloxone, where and why they're using it, and if they need replacements?
It's a good question. We don't have any reporting requirements in place right now. We're certainly going to be talking to schools and talking to the Department of Education to see how this rollout goes once the kids start, hitting the ground in schools.
Without a reporting system, state officials could miss out on key information showing where the fentanyl crisis is growing or which students are most at risk. As it stands, the naloxone to schools plan is a one-time initiative. The state is using $693,000 from a $325 million settlement with opioid manufacturers and pharmaceutical distributors. Naloxone typically expires after 3 years.
If we're getting to the point where schools are running out of naloxone, I think that's a really, potentially bad situation to be in, and I think we need to reevaluate. Again, thankfully, these overdoses on school property are very rare at this point. But even though the numbers are still small, the trends are not in the right direction right now.
Jean said the state plans to distribute the naloxone in 2 to 3 months, sometime early spring.
And I think ultimately we would like to see the numbers of youth overdose deaths going down. And I think we will get there with the help of this naloxone, these naloxone kits.
Evan's here with me now, and it is amazing to me that this drug is so prevalent that we've gotten to this point where schools have to have Narcan, but I guess they do. So what about those reporting requirements, though? They don't seem like they're going to be doing much reporting.
Yeah, it's frustrating, right? Because we've talked about this in Washington when we've covered this here on The Story. Washington doesn't have reporting requirements. We've tracked it through how often schools are voluntarily saying that they're using this, to then look at the number of overdoses in Washington schools, kind of expanding out for that case-by-case basis to the larger mechanism here. Now in Oregon, you're starting now, it would be helpful to have reporting requirements to know where it's being used, why it's being used, what age, maybe areas of the state that it's more prevalent than others, but still really frustrating to me personally that you wouldn't want to track that, because when we get to this, that's part of how you get information of where you can better serve, where the crisis is, what needs to be done in the future, and just a voluntary survey type of thing, or somewhere, hey, send to us whenever you use this, where you use it and why, and then we'll compile it from there, would make a lot of sense in my opinion.
Yeah, and as a parent, I would want to know if Narcan was being used at my kid's school because somebody was overdosing. All right. Thank you, Evan Watson. Great stuff. Now let's get to some of your thoughts on our big story from Wednesday's show, the announcement of a new plan to address homelessness in Multnomah County. County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson and Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler unveiled the plan yesterday, saying it's the basis for a new 3-year contract agreement for the Joint Office of Homeless Services. That deal still needs to be approved by both the City Council and County Commissioners. But it does appear to be the long-awaited unified plan between city and county that many have been calling for. The details on things like goals and accountability aspect, check out our story on the KGW YouTube channel. It's all there, but too much to get into right now. At the end of our segment, though, we asked for your thoughts, as we often do. And while some of us here are tentatively hopeful the plan will lead to positive results, many of you, turns out, are not.
It's just more of the same. You've got two egotistical leaders in Wheeler and Peterson who put together tonight a situation where they think that they can fool us with their cooperation. And I'm sorry, I hate to say this, but it's not going to work and they're way off. This situation requires the fact that the enforcement of the rule and law needs to be in place. I'm not encouraged at all.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Scott wrote to us to say, yada, 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 a big waste of tax money. These folks get free tents, food, facilities, and more. Let's put them to work, cleaning camps and earning tax money. I see this plan falling flat in 6 months.
There she goes again. Assess, identify, look at data, plan, blah, blah, blah. That's all she knows how to do. Why not stand up there and say, we're going to put 15 new people on project response. We're going to put 25 new people on the social services at Rose Haven, Central City Concern. We're going to hire case managers that are going to go out and interview these people. Again, all she wants to do is look at, assess, data, identify, and plan, and nothing gets done. And it won't get done this time either.
All right, thanks for that. And how about this one from James? I really hope that the county and city can actually finally make this work. The only difference I see is the metrics that are allegedly going to be used to measure the progress. All the talking points that Peterson and Wheeler made during the rollout were exactly the same as their alleged enthusiasm. Go get them, politicos. Lives are depending on you.
It still continues to seem as if this is mostly data-driven and committee-driven and planning-driven and not so much action and outcome-driven. And it sure seems like to me that it's just another plan, but it doesn't sound to me like it's going to lead to the accomplishment of the goals of getting people off the streets. So I hope I'm wrong. Thank you.
And thank you. And Linda chimed in. I wonder if the city and county joining forces on homelessness will really make a difference. The walls that have made them ineffective can still be there. Trying to be hopeful. Larry liked most of what he heard, though. I'm encouraged to see city and county finally working together. Great steps in the right direction. But where is Clackamas County in all this? I live in the Southgate area. We have homeless here, too. On a broader scale, why isn't this being done by Metro-wide? Good question, Larry. There was also a theme among many of your comments saying that something is missing from the new plan. HW wrote to us to say, words I did not hear on the city's talk of priorities, treatment. This is at the root of a lot of the other problems, crime and so forth. Simply putting the addicted in housing will not magically solve the addiction problem. They are only dealing with the optics. Treatment must be mandatory. And Dennis said, new homeless plan of the month. Any plans that don't include mental health and drug rehab is a plan doomed to fail. Sure, they can keep throwing money at the problem, but that helps no one. Just sounds like political double talk to me. Okay, thank you. I was with Blair Best at the press conference yesterday, and she asked about how addiction services factor into this new plan because she often reports on the addiction crisis.
We hear so much about affordable housing, more shelter, but the underlying issue out there is addiction. How can we possibly house all these people without enough addiction services?
So I appreciate that. I mean, we absolutely need more affordable housing. We don't, I mean, even that, just that aside, we don't have enough places for people to live that they can afford. So that continues to be a key thing. But just as important is making sure the people who need treatment, who want to have treatment, whatever that looks like, whether that looks like going through detox, going into a treatment program, having a place to go while they're in recovery, all of those things are investments that are needed. That's why I'm most excited about the part of the structure that we're proposing that is what we're calling right now the implementation committee, where we're actually having the folks who are responsible for putting those kinds of things into action at the table together as we're talking about our homelessness response system. So it's folks from our Department of Health and our behavioral health folks, but it's also our some of our CCO partners, our healthcare partners. I think it's going to be really important as we're talking about what we need in our community that we have, that we're sharing that information with the state, because they're a part of these systems that the state is responsible for as well. And it's not just the behavioral health folks and the healthcare folks that are going to be at the table, but we're also talking about some of our justice partners. We were talking about housing, the housing folks at the table. We were talking about our crisis response system partners at the table, so that we can be really taking a look at this holistically as we're talking about what the system needs and how each of us can be a part of making that solution.
So that's the chair basically saying, yeah, we're going to talk about it. Now, in my opinion, it feels like we're long past talking about it. Just look at the lines of people trying to get into one of only 2 walk-in toxic centers, detox centers in the city every morning. But let's hope these new meetings, as part of this new plan, bring all the city and county players to a table together and spur some real action to boost treatment options instead of just talking about it. And for those of you thinking this plan might shake things up too much, oh, don't worry about that. Some things will still stay the same, just like in the bad old days. Blair also asked if the county will continue to provide tents and tarps to homeless folks, and the chair said yes. And then Mayor Wheeler stepped up and said the city will continue to remove tents and tarps from the public right-of-ways. Nice little closed loop there of your tax dollars at work, paying for one group to give the tents out, then paying the other group to take them down. Some things don't change. And while we're talking about the big plan to deal with homelessness, it made us think of County Commissioner Sharon Myron. She's an ER doc and also volunteers with a medical group that helps the homeless, and she's a county commissioner. She's also been very critical of the approach taken so far to deal with the issue. For months now, she's been sounding the alarm that there's no organized plan to fight homelessness in the county. Way back in May of this year, we brought you extended comments from the commissioner saying there should be one person in charge and that goals and metrics should be used to measure whether any progress is actually being made. Well, this new plan does not put anyone in charge, but at least there are goals and metrics. Myron was not brought in to work on the agreement, by the way. She said she learned about the details after the news conference yesterday. So, yeah, I guess that speaks volumes for how well the board's working together, eh? Anyway, Myron had already planned a virtual town hall to share her vision for what a good homeless response would look like, and last night she held it. She told those who turned in that a homeless response should address 3 areas that you see there on your screen: prevention, shelter, and housing. She also addressed something that happened when the county board recently voted on how to spend more than $60 million in unexpected tax money on homeless programs. During that meeting and before the vote, Myron, right there, wanted to show her concept of how she thinks the system should be set up. She had a poster board to lay it all out, but she was shut down by the county chair, not allowed to show it. So last night, she brought it out. She had a chance to show it during her own town hall. This is how she thinks it would make sense to set up the system, that the focus would start on the streets where lives are at risk and then move to shelters and then transitional housing. She also showed this graphic to contrast her vision with the current reality of how the system is working, a system she described as chaotic and ineffective.
This is a mess. This is not something that can effectively create shared vision or policy or plans, because where do you even go with it? And so that's why I believe that we are sort of where we are. It's with no authoritative governance structure that has sort of the decision-making authority, without defined leadership. There has been no coordinated shared plan around homelessness. And the result has been both predictable and devastating.
Now, part of what the city and county say they're doing now is trying to change that to create a shared vision and policy for dealing with homelessness, exactly what Myron's talking about being needed. But as I mentioned earlier, Myron was kept out of the announcement yesterday. She was asked about that during her town hall.
I didn't hear a plan today at all. I heard that they're going to talk about an agreement. You'll hear more about this over the coming days and weeks, probably. The city and county are negotiating their relationship around part of homelessness, because the joint office is not truly a joint office. It's a county department, and there's stuff happening there. A lot of it is behind closed doors. Like, I literally found out about the press conference after it happened today. And I don't know, I hope so. And I hope they're open to different voices, but the devil's in the details. And if their words are met with action, great. That's what I've been saying for years.
So there you go. I talked with the commissioner late today. She said that she is hopeful that things will start moving in the right direction, but she's skeptical as well. And I know that we keep saying it, but we really will be watching to see how the city and county move forward with this, and we'll let you know what we see. Coming up next on The Story, the city of Portland looks to increase the number of big outdoor shelter spaces for homeless folks, and they now have a second plot of land in mind. Doesn't it look nice? But there might be a big problem with it. Blair Best will explain when The Story returns. Ah, yes, Christmas is coming. There's just 10 days left to give this year to the KGW Great Toy Drive. Now is a great time to give because Regents Blue Cross Blue Shield will kick in up to $5,000 if we collect that much from you all this week. You can also drop off a new unwrapped toy at any local Toyota dealership, Fred Meyer, or IQ Credit Union branch. And we even have a collection event going on this weekend. It's happening Saturday at the Clackamas Promenade. Please help us bring some joy to thousands of families this holiday season. Much of the city of Portland's response to the homeless crisis has been aimed at creating more shelters, both indoor and outdoor shelters, including one mass-sanctioned camping site. It's in southeast Portland along Powell Boulevard. But in late October, the city announced the location of its second big camp like this, an empty industrial site in North Portland. It's not up and running yet, as I guess you can kind of see. And there's a new snag that could mean big-time delays. The problem? Toxic chemicals in the ground. Blair Best explains.
Much of the land along the Columbia Slough is known to have one thing in common.
Is a history of about 100 years of industrial use.
I've started calling this area a brownfield sandwich.
And right in the middle is this empty plot off North Portland Road. It will soon house nearly 200 homeless people.
When I first heard about this, I thought this site is toxic.
Charlotte McDonald lives about a half-mile away. Back in October, the city chose this land for its second mass-sanctioned homeless camp.
We can't place the most vulnerable people in our community on site of an already toxic site. It's just adding to their burden.
Lauren Wirtis with the Department of Environmental Quality says they found toxins in the site's soil 10 years ago. It was once used for boat manufacturing.
Where they broke things apart, cleaned things, repaired things, and that means a lot of different contamination over many decades.
Portland's Bureau of Environmental Services now owns the property. They're required to test the soil before any shelter can be built. Samples have been collected and are now being processed. The DEQ is still waiting for those results.
We'll probably find something. What we're waiting to find out is how much and of what contamination, so we know what risk that poses.
So if the test results show that the site is in fact contaminated, which experts believe that it is, it's not clear yet how much it would cost or how long it would take to clean up. But that would all fall on the city to take care of before they could start safely moving homeless people in.
I actually don't have a problem with this being a site if it was clean.
A city spokesperson says their goal is to open the site in the coming months.
I'm really concerned that the city is moving way too fast and doing it for some kind of other purpose. I don't think they just care about the people. I think they want to check a box that they did a solution.
The city leaders are meeting with neighbors tonight to talk about their concerns with the site, including those about land safety. In North Portland, Blair Best, KTW News.
Thank you, Blair. Coming up next, today marks 82 years since the attack on Pearl Harbor. Only a handful of survivors were able to attend the remembrance ceremony today. One of them from Beaverton. We'll show you what it was like right after this.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
Today marks 82 years since that attack on Pearl Harbor, and flags all across America flew at half-staff in honor of over 2,000 American service members and civilians whose lives were cut short in 1941. The attack was what propelled the U.S. into the fray of World War II. The annual commemoration took place this morning at the Pearl Harbor National Memorial. Time is taking its toll, of course, on the few survivors who are still with us. Only 5 were able to attend today, but one of those men lives in Beaverton. This is Ira Ike Schaub, now 103 years old. He survived the attack as a sailor on the USS Dobbin. This was his 5th time attending the remembrance ceremony. He says he returns each year out of respect for his friends who did not make it home. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. The good stuff's coming up next. We'll see you right back here tomorrow at 6:30.